A 9-7 record and dead last in rushing. By every metric that matters, the 2011 Giants had no business being anywhere near a Super Bowl.
Manning, end zone, touchdown.
But an average quarterback in Eli Manning walked through four of the most dangerous teams in the league to win it. There were no breaks or easy matchups, and no Super Bowl contender since has faced a tougher competition. We're going to go through every single round to show you exactly how difficult it was. To understand what the 2011 Giants did, we have to go back 4 years because this identity didn't just come out of nowhere. The 2007 Giants finished 10-6 just like the 2011 team did. They entered the playoffs as a wild card, and most people had already written them off before the first whistle blew. What happened next became one of the most famous runs in NFL history, and it set the template for everything that followed. The team they had to face at the end of the run was the 2007 New England Patriots, and there's no overstating how good that team was. Tom Brady threw 50 touchdown passes that season, and Randy Moss caught 23 of them, which both set an NFL record at the time. New England went 16-0 in the regular season, making them the only ever team to do that, and they carried an 18-0 record into the Super Bowl. The entire football world expected them to just finish the job. The Giants had actually played the Patriots in the final week of the regular season. New England won that game 38-35, but that game showed that New York was ready for the challenge. Eli Manning threw for 251 yards and 4 touchdowns against that defense, proving the Giants weren't just showing up to lose. They were competing at a high level, and they knew they could hang with the best. The playoff run itself was no gift from the league. They beat Tampa Bay in the wildcard round and then won in Dallas against a Cowboys team that finished 13-3. Shout out Jessica Simpson. From there, they traveled to Lambeau for the NFC Championship in what became one of the coldest games in that stadium's history. The temperature was -1 degree with the wind chill of -23, but the Giants still beat Brett Favre and the Packers in overtime. Then came Super Bowl 42. The play everyone remembers is David Tyree pinning the ball against his helmet on a 3rd and 5 with $1:15 left to keep the winning drive alive. Manning broke free from 3 pass rushers who had him dead to rights and spun out and bought just enough time to launch it downfield. After that, Plaxico Burress caught the go-ahead touchdown with 35 seconds left, and the final score was 17-14, and the perfect season was over. What that team taught the entire organization was that regular season records are just context, not a final verdict. In January, the scoreboard resets and execution beats reputation every single time. The 4 years following that Super Bowl run didn't look anything like a dynasty in the making. If anything, it looked like a slow slide into mediocrity. From 2008 through 2010, the Giants only made the playoffs twice and got bounced in the first round both times. The offense couldn't find a rhythm, the defense was showing its age, and Eli Manning was struggling. Just 3 years after beating the greatest team ever assembled, Eli led the entire league with 25 interceptions in 2010. The narrative around him shifted from being a clutch playoff performer to a guy who just gave games away. And looking at the numbers, it was really hard to argue otherwise. Coming into 2011, New York wasn't on anyone's radar. Preseason odds had them at plus 2,200 to win it all, and most analysts picked them to finish 3rd in the NFC East behind Philadelphia and Dallas. The Eagles had just built what they called a dream team in the offseason, and the Cowboys still had one of the most talented rosters in the conference. The Giants were basically background noise until 2 specific players changed the framing of the entire season. The first spark came from Victor Cruz. He was an undrafted kid out of UMass who didn't catch a single pass his rookie year, so he entered 2011 as a depth receiver that nobody was tracking. By December, he had turned into one of the most dangerous slot receivers in football. He finished the regular season with over 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns, including a 99-yard catch and run against the Jets that kept the season alive in Week 16. Cruz wasn't supposed to be a primary weapon, but he became the engine of the offense anyway. The second factor was the emergence of Jason Pierre-Paul. In just his second season, JPP recorded 16.5 sacks and became a nightmare for every offensive line he faced. Having him on one side and Justin Tuck on the other gave the Giants a pass rush that could wreck a game plan on its own. The defense finally had its teeth back, but even with that talent, this season felt like a disaster for long stretches. New York actually started 6-2 and beat the Patriots on the road in November, which made them look like real contenders for a moment. Then the wheels fell off as they lost 4 straight games while giving up 32 points per game on average during that collapse. By week 14, they sat at 7-7 with fans openly calling for Tom Coughlin to be fired. They had 2 games left and needed a division title or their season was over. That 99-yard touchdown from Cruz against the Jets swung the momentum and kept their hopes alive for 1 more week. They followed that up with a dominant 31-14 win over Dallas in the finale where Manning threw for 3 touchdowns and the defense forced key turnovers. They took the NFC East at 9-7, but they barely made it into the playoffs. The regular season stat that defines this team better than anything else is that they actually beat exactly 1 team with a winning record over the full 16-game schedule. They scored 394 points but gave up 400, meaning their point differential was actually negative. By almost every single objective measure, they were a below average football team that only won the division because everyone else was worse. However, none of that was going to matter once January arrived. The Atlanta Falcons in the wildcard round wasn't just supposed to be another speed bump from New York. They finished that season at 10-6 and won against some real competition. They were looking like real threats in the NFC. Matt Ryan threw for over 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns that year while playing behind one of the better offensive lines in the conference. With Roddy White and rookie Julio Jones on the outside, plus Tony Gonzalez at tight end, this was an explosive group. You weren't supposed to hold a team like this to just 2 points, but 2 points is exactly what Atlanta finished with. The only score the Falcons managed came from a safety where Manning was called for intentional grounding in his own end zone. From a pure offensive standpoint, Ryan and his weapons produced absolutely nothing. Eli looked nothing like a quarterback who had struggled with interceptions the year before. He finished the day 23 of 32 for 277 yards and 3 touchdowns with 0 turnovers, earning a 129.3 passer rating. That was the highest single mark of his entire postseason career, and he had plenty of help from his playmakers. Hakeem Nicks burned the Atlanta secondary for a 66-yard touchdown in the first quarter to set the tone, while Bradshaw and Jacobs combined for 155 rushing yards. The ground game was suddenly alive in a way it hadn't been all season. The final score was 24-2. It wasn't a fluke or a lucky win. This game matters because of what it revealed about where the Giants were heading. A 9-7 team with a negative point differential doesn't just accidentally shut down a high-powered playoff offense like that. Something was clearly different about this group in January, from the way the defense flew to the ball to the way Manning processed the field. The eye test told you everything you needed to know. This was a complete performance by a team that had finally flipped the switch. It was also a warning that the football world mostly ignored. Everyone was too focused on the next opponent to realize what New York had just done to Atlanta. The defending champion Packers were waiting in Green Bay with a healthy Aaron Rodgers and a 15-1 record. Lambeau Field was sold out, and most people had already moved past the wildcard round to start planning for what they assumed would be a Green Bay demolition. We need to put that 15-1 record into actual context because the numbers don't just show you exactly how dominant that team truly was. Aaron Rodgers threw 45 touchdown passes against just 6 interceptions that season, finishing with a passer rating of 122.5. That mark led the NFL by 12 points over the next closest guy and set an NFL record, helping him win the MVP award with 48 out of 50 votes. The Packers weren't just winning games, they were operating at a level where most matchups felt over by halftime, and they were doing it as the defending Super Bowl champions. It looked like they were a dynasty in the making. They hadn't lost at Lambeau Field in over a year, making a home game in Green Bay in January against a 9-7 wildcard team look like the safest bet in football. Vegas set the Giants as 9-point underdogs, which is a massive spread for a playoff game between 2 professional teams. You only see a line like that when one side is expected to control every single snap from start to finish. Most analysts treated the game as a formality, and the conversation wasn't about whether Green Bay would advance, but rather which team they would face in the championship round. Hakeem Nicks erased that entire narrative in about 3 quarters of football by racking up 7 catches for 165 yards and 2 scores. His biggest play was a Hail Mary grab at the end of the first half that completely shifted the energy in the stadium. With 6 seconds left on the clock, Manning launched a prayer downfield, and Hakeem climbed the ladder in a crowd to pull it down. That play gave the Giants a 20-10 lead going into the locker room, and it told the Green Bay defense that their entire afternoon was about to get very difficult. Eli finished the day 21-33 for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns, effectively outplaying the MVP on his own frozen turf. Aaron Rodgers had only 6 interceptions all year, but the Giants defense forced him and the team into 4 total turnovers during this game. The pass rush got home and the secondary made plays, proving that the system Steve Spagnuolo built could handle the most explosive offense in the league. The final score sat at 37-20, and the most important thing to remember is that this margin wasn't built on late garbage time points. New York took the lead and extended it from halftime, while Green Bay never truly threatened to mount a comeback. For a team that spent the entire season making football look effortless, it was a stunning way for their run to end. This was a historical first because no 15-1 team had ever lost in the divisional round in the entire history of the NFL up to that point. Green Bay was the best regular season team in the league, yet they lost to a wildcard opponent by 17 points before they could even reach the conference title game. 2 rounds were down and 2 elite teams were out of the bracket, but San Francisco was waiting. 2011 49ers didn't look like a dynasty in the making just yet, and Jim Harbaugh was only there for 1 single season, but they went 13-3 and they were genuinely miserable to play against. They allowed just 229 points all year, which was the second fewest in the NFL, and they relied on a defense that was as physical as any unit in the history of the sport. Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman were the two starting linebackers, and both were arguably the best at their position during that era. Justin Smith controlled the line of scrimmage on every single snap, while a rookie named Aldon Smith recorded 14 sacks off the edge. Having 4 different players who can individually wreck a game plan is rare, but they all work together in a system that focused on suffocating quarterbacks until they made a mistake. Eli Manning didn't make many mistakes that day, but he certainly paid a physical price for every single pass he attempted. He was hit 12 times and sacked 6 times as the Giants' offensive line struggled to hold back a front that was faster and stronger than anything they had ever seen. There were several plays where Eli took a clean shot to the ribs before the ball even left his hand, and by the third quarter the hits were clearly adding up. He just kept getting back up though, heading to the huddle and calling the next play like nothing happened. His final stat line was 32 of 58 for 316 yards and 2 touchdowns. While that completion percentage looks low, the context shows that he was under constant duress and often had to throw into non-existent windows. The throws he did complete moved the chains when it mattered the most, and his touchdowns kept the Giants alive while the offensive line was getting dominated. On the other side of the ball, San Francisco was moving in chunks, highlighted by Vernon Davis catching a 73-yard touchdown in the first half. That play brought the entire stadium to its feet and gave the 49ers the kind of momentum that usually ends a game. The lead changed hands back and forth as neither defense could put the other away, and when the fourth quarter clock hit 0, the score was tied at 17. In overtime, the game turned on a mistake by Kyle Williams during a punt return. He had already fumbled once in the fourth quarter, which led to a Giants touchdown, and then it happened again in the extra period. Williams mishandled the ball, Devin Thomas recovered it for the second time, and suddenly the Giants had the ball at the San Francisco 24-yard line. Lawrence Tynes eventually stepped up and kicked the 31-yard field goal to win it all, 20-17. That makes 3 rounds and 3 legitimate contenders knocked out of the playoffs, but the New England Patriots were the final boss. The 2011 Patriots were a completely different team than Eli Manning and the boys took down 4 years ago. Tom Brady was coming off of a regular season where he threw for 5,235 yards, which was the second highest total anyone had ever seen in NFL history at that time. He finished with 39 touchdown passes while Rob Gronkowski was busy shattering every single receiving record for a tight end. Gronk ended that year with 1,327 yards and 17 touchdown catches, which is still an NFL record. And the thing is, he wasn't even their only threat. Aaron Hernandez added another 910 yards and 7 scores out of that same look, and because New England played them both at the exact same time, no defense in the league could figure out how to stop them. The Patriots put up 513 points during the regular season on their way to a 13-3 record and the top seed in the AFC. New England also had a massive chip on their shoulder heading into this game. They had spent 4 years sitting with that 17-14 loss and 4 years knowing their perfect season died because of a helmet catch they couldn't stop. The revenge narrative was everywhere, and the odds makers reflected it by making the Patriots 2.5-point favorites. The Giants actually jumped out to an early lead when a Brady intentional grounding penalty in the end zone gave New York a safety. Manning then found Victor Cruz for a 2-yard touchdown to make it 9-0 after the first quarter, but that's when the Patriots finally woke up. Tom led multiple long scoring drives that resulted in 17 unanswered points, including a Danny Woodhead touchdown right before half and an Aaron Hernandez score early in the third. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, New England held a 17-9 lead and looked like they were in total control. What happened next was a masterclass from a Giants defense that had been building towards this moment all season long. They completely shut down the Patriots offense that usually averaged over 30 points a game, holding them scoreless for the entire second half. Gronkowski was clearly struggling with an ankle sprain he'd suffered earlier in the week, and the Giants secondary did a great job of keeping him contained. Brady was still able to move the ball in short bursts, but he couldn't find a way to finish any of his drives when it mattered most. With under 4 minutes left and the Giants trailing by 2, Eli Manning took over at his own 12-yard line to start the drive that defined his career. On 2nd and 11, he took the snap and stepped up into the pocket before launching a deep ball down the left sideline to Mario Manningham. It was a 38-yard strike that Manningham somehow hauled in with both feet just inches from the white line. Belichick challenged the catch, but the call stood and New England lost their final timeout in the process. A few more completions moved the ball inside the 10, that's where things got weird. Ahmad Bradshaw ran it in from 6 yards out, but he actually tried to stop himself at the 1-yard line because the Patriots defense had stepped aside to let him score. New England needed the clock to stop so they could have one last shot, and while Bradshaw tried to sit down, his momentum carried him into the end zone. The Giants took a 21-17 lead with only 57 seconds left on the clock. Brady got the ball back and managed to push the ball all the way to midfield. but his most reliable target let him down at the worst possible time. Wes Welker dropped a wide open pass on a crossing route that would have put New England in easy field goal range. Justin Tuck sacked Brady on the very next play, and when the final Hail Mary hit the turf, the Giants were champions again. Eli Manning finished the day 30 of 40 for 296 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions, earning his second Super Bowl MVP against the exact same franchise. When you look at the full picture of this playoff run, the level of competition is almost hard to believe. 3 of the opponents they faced had a legitimate claim to be the best team in the NFL that year, and the Giants beat them all. No Super Bowl champion in the modern era has ever had to walk a road this difficult. If you look at the quality of the opponents round after round, there really isn't a fair comparison. People usually talk about the 2007 run because of the undefeated narrative, but the 2011 bracket was actually much tougher. They had to face more elite teams and win more games on the road, including a conference championship that went into overtime. Eli Manning's stats across those 4 games tells the whole story. He finished with 106 completions on 163 attempts for 1,219 yards and 9 TDs with only 1 interception. That gave him a passer rating of 103.3 while playing in some of the best defenses in the league and in hostile environments, all while cementing his status as a future Hall of Famer. So there you have it. Watch this next video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.